currently, Ohio State has officially supplanted longtime #1 Notre Dame. That's going to happen when 10 of your 13 total commits are part of the top 247, 3 in the top 10 nationally. Then you still have Notre Dame there up at the top at #2 with 19 commits, LSU, USC, Clemson, all rounding out the top 5. Joining the show now, national recruiting analyst Tom Loy is here to break down some big visits during spring games over the weekend. And let's go ahead and start with the top class in the cycle. That is Ohio State. They had quite a few high-profile visitors in the house. I will say an absolutely packed house at the Shoe this weekend, and they're reaping the rewards already of having all those visitors in. So what does landing 4-star tight end Nate Roberts and safety Cody Haddad mean to this 2025 group early on?
It was a heck of a weekend in Columbus, and things got better. Cody Haddad committing. Ohio State is fired up to land that safety. The staff looks at him as one of the more underrated defensive backs in the country. He's a guy that sees somebody that's going to surprise as a senior, and then somebody that's going to play and potentially be an early contributor in Columbus. So they're really, really fired up about that one. And then with Nate Roberts, man, Ohio State could not be more excited about this one, just to finally get it done. I mean, it's been a long road. They've been battling. Once he was committed to Notre Dame, they lost out there. Then a lot of people thought it was going to be Oklahoma. I kind of stood steadfast with my crystal ball that I put in early for Ohio State, and it all worked out. Tight ends coach Keenan Bailey, nobody recruited him harder than anybody in the country. And not only did he do a good job with connecting with Nate, but it was his family. He did a great job of pushing all the right buttons with everybody in the Roberts family, second cousins, grandparents. I mean, he did a phenomenal job. So he made it a point to make him a priority, and it paid off. But I've seen Nate Roberts multiple times in person. I like him a lot. I think he's one of the more complete tight ends in the country. I really do love this get for the Buckeyes.
A lot of the recruits that were in the horseshoe were there to see the former #1 player in the class for 2024, Jeremiah Smith, the 5-star wide receiver. And I joked with him in San Antonio earlier this year, Tom, about Brian Hartline's recruiting pitch. You could probably seal his mouth shut, and he would still be able to just point at a few posters, you know, Jackson Smith, Nick Jigba, Marvin Harrison Jr., Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, just to name a few. One player in this current cycle that is hearing that pitch is Jamie French. What's the latest intel on the dynamic wide receiver?
I still really like Ohio State for Jamie French. Brian Hartline obviously leading the charge, and nobody seems to be pushing all the right buttons quite like the Buckeyes, and especially with Hartline running it. French continues to state that he's going to take all of his official visits. He wants to take his time. He was once committed to Bama. Now he wants to slow it down and make sure the second decision is the right one. But he's going to make trips to Tennessee and Texas, along with Florida State, potentially Miami. I think he's going to, I feel confident saying he's going to get back to Ohio State. But despite, positive chatter and vibes, when you talk to people connected with the Longhorns, the Volunteers, I think the one that Ohio State fans need to watch closely is the, Miami Hurricanes. I think in state, they're doing the best job. They are looking for redemption. You brought up Jeremiah Smith. They lost out late on him last cycle. They would love any shot at redemption, payback after missing on Jeremiah Smith. So they would love to do that with Jamie French.
Yeah, and if you need a reminder of just how close that recruitment was with Jeremiah Smith, the look on Ryan Day's face when he found out in that press conference, just the sheer excitement and just feeling good about that. So yeah, Miami definitely looking some redemption there. Meanwhile, a lot of interest in watching Kalen DeBoer's debut with the Tide. I know I was tuned in, and that was evident by the amount of just top recruits at Bryant-Denny this weekend. And one liked what he saw already. That's 4-star linebacker Jaden Harmon. He committed to the Tide over the weekend. What are they getting in him?
They see a guy that's a genuine day one impact guy and a future difference maker. He's a productive talent that is coming off an excellent junior season. There was a lot of heavy hitters in this one. You're looking at Oregon, Ohio State, A&M, many others. But in the end, the Crimson Tide sealed the deal. They are thrilled to have him locked in. And this was a really nice get. I know that when I was talking to Brett Greenberg, he was saying how fired up everybody in that building is. And Brett does a great job over at our Bama 24/7 site. So Alabama's getting a good one. I think he's a really good player. So nice win.
Tom, that was A Day. There's also G Day down in Athens. The Masters wasn't the only big event in the Peach State this past weekend as Georgia held their spring game, and they had a who's who list of recruits as well. And one name that headlined that group was Justice Terry, a player that flipped from the Bulldogs to USC earlier this offseason. What's the latest intel on Justice Terry and where the Georgia Bulldogs stand with him?
Getting Justice Terry, a Peach State native, getting him back on campus, he's committed to USC. This is a big deal, but to be honest, let's be honest, this was very much expected. I don't think anybody expected Terry to commit to the Trojans and completely shut it down and be over with this process. So for Georgia, you can expect him back on campus multiple times before his process completely comes to a close. I was told the staff did a great job this weekend of laying out everything, showing him what a future would look like if he stays at home with the Dogs, and it seems to resonate really well with him. So I think Georgia's just in a really good spot. They're moving the needle, just trying to kind of continue that relationship and then get him to feeling, more happy to be home in Georgia.
That flip from Georgia to USC just happened about 3 weeks ago. We're still talking about the interest in the Dogs. What are some other prospects that came away impressed after visiting for G-Day?
I think Georgia's in a really good spot for a couple top 247 guys. Cornerback Dijon Lee, receiver Travis Smith Jr., offensive lineman Dontrell Glover, a guy who they like at center. And then linebacker, safety, just do-it-all defensive standout Eric Winters. But for Lee, I think Dante Williams is a guy that could be the difference maker in their pursuit of him. I think he's going to be, the guy that if Dijon ends up picking Georgia, it's all because it's playing for Dante. But with Glover, Georgia's doing a really good job there. I know Benjamin Wolk was raving about their chances there and just saying that Georgia's doing a really good job. But I wouldn't be surprised to see him lock in an official visit soon. Travis Smith always talks highly of Georgia. He's a top target and a long-time top target for Georgia. But James Coley, ever since he became the receivers coach, he's pushing all the right buttons for him, making him a priority, and they seem to be in a good spot. And then with Winters, most people think it's Auburn right now, and I'd probably agree that they're the team to beat, maybe before this weekend. I think Georgia's doing a really good job. I think they're cementing themselves as a true finalist and an impact finalist heading into his final visits before he makes a decision, which is probably coming sooner rather than later. But watch out for Miami, too. I think that a lot of people were sleeping on him early on, and then a visit to Coral Gables kind of shook things up. So keep an eye on those three teams when it comes to winners.
The Hurricanes are pushing for another top 10 class. You just brought them up. A little further south was also their spring game, headlined by the #1 and #2 interior offensive linemen in this 2025 recruiting cycle. How big was this weekend for the Hurricanes, Tom?
This weekend was extremely important for Miami. They had multiple top targets on campus and seemed to, move the needle with them. But the weekend started off with a bang. You had top 247 tight end Brock Schott, a guy from right here in my backyard in Indiana. He announced his commitment to Miami, so that was huge. But all in all, Miami feels really good about Florida State offensive line commit Solomon Thomas. He was there Friday and Saturday. Him and his mom were decked out in Miami gear, according to Gabby Urrutia, who was all over this over at our Cane site. But Florida State still expects him in the class, but watch out for the Hurricanes. It's clear Miami made a big move with top 100 offensive lineman S.J. Alufa-Tuli over at Bishop Gorman. This was a big visit for his family, especially with his mom. He hit me up earlier today and was raving about the trip. My crystal ball is on the Hurricanes, and I feel even better about it after him getting on campus. I mean, he was talking about the academics, the athletics, just all in all, a really good visit. And then really lastly, Nate Marshall, he visited, a top 100 kid out of Illinois. He connected with Marquise Lightfoot, who signed with the Hurricanes last year. He already knows Justin Scott, another Illinois native. He was there. So just all in all, Miami seems to be pushing all the right buttons. They're moving in the right direction. I love what the staff is doing. We talk about them all the time, but I think overall they helped themselves a ton this weekend, and they're moving in the right direction. Mario Cristobal has to be really happy about the direction of everything. Now he just needs to close.
Yeah, Hurricanes fans watching right now, I'm sure they were keeping tabs of how many times I heard Miami during that segment, and it was quite a bit, Tom. So that really illustrates just how much momentum this program has right now. Tom, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it. You can catch out more of his work. He is a frequent guest on the 24/7 Sports Football Recruiting Podcast with our friends Andrew Ivins and Cooper Patagna. As a reminder, new episodes drop every Tuesday and Wednesday on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel, or of course, listen wherever you get your podcasts.